Hey, Hawkeye fans, special edition of the Hawks Central podcast. We didn't have the radio show this week, but we do have Tyler Tachman, and looks like a fancy, I don't know, what do you got there? Like in a Vegas cabin? That looks like a pretty nice setup out there in Las Vegas, Tyler Tachman.
Man, Mandalay Bay Big Ten Media Days, they're treating me right. It's not like a luxurious thing. It's nice though. It's nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Had you
can't
ever been
complain.
to have you been to Vegas before, or was this your first time?
No, so my grandparents used to live here,
Okay.
and so it's kind of nostalgic for me because I used to come here at least like once a year growing up. So there was a bunch of spots that I hit that I just had kind of gone to growing up. So that was kind of a cool part of the experience for me.
Okay. Well, Chad Leistikow here of the Des Moines Register, Tyler Tachman of the Des Moines Register. Dargan Southard, also a teammate of ours at the Register, is on the production side of this, and he also covers women's basketball along with me. So we're going to talk Iowa football, Big Ten Media Days for about 25 minutes or so before Tyler has to go to the Vegas airport. But if you guys want a little bonus women's basketball segment, let us know in the chat. If not, we're cool with letting it go too. I got plenty of work to do today, but happy to talk about women's hoops as we've seen 4 practices now this summer and have a lot to take away from that. But Tyler, you've been working really hard out in Vegas. Thankfully, I had the Tim Lester sit down. That kept me very busy back home. But appreciate your hard work out there. Let's start with the wide receivers. The story posted this morning. Why don't you talk it through? But when you tweeted the quote from Kirk Ferentz that this year's receivers reminds him of last year's offensive line, which had an unbelievable year. Just turning that running game around. First in the Big Ten most of the year. Caleb Johnson, first team All-American. An embattled position group for years and years under George Barnett, had the big breakthrough last year. He's comparing the receivers to that group, and that really opens my eyes because it matches some of the hype that we've been hearing, seeing with our own eyes as well. And it's odd for Kirk Ferentz to even go that far, but I think very, very notable. And that was what stood out to me from your coverage the most. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that was definitely one of the most notable things to be said, I thought, from Kirk Ferentz. And it might be important to qualify it as like maybe a really good year for Iowa's wide receivers is not the same as a really good year for Iowa's offensive line, just because there's a different program standard, right? Iowa is known for good offensive line play, not as much for wide receiver play. But it was basically Kirk Ferentz saying that you saw the trajectory of Iowa's offensive line where there was just major struggles in 2022, improved in 2023, but it still had more room to go. And then last season, the build up to last season, it felt like there was a sense of optimism that Iowa finally had the pieces to just be in a better place. And that obviously came to fruition with the way that the offensive line played and paired with Caleb Johnson and helped really establish that offensive progress in Tim Lester's first season. And so now Kirk Ferentz saying maybe that is sort of the trajectory that Iowa's wide receivers have been on. And that's been quarterback has taken a lot of scrutiny, but it's not fully on their shoulders the past few seasons. The wide receivers haven't exactly lived up to their end of the bargain, as well as kind of, it's on multiple positions, the lackluster passing game. But now you had all these guys that gained meaningful experience last season. You look at, Reese Vanderzee, Jacob Gill, Dayton Howard, Jarrett Bowie, even though Seth Anderson didn't play a lot, now he's been in the program. This is entering his 3rd season. You have these guys that have now been in the program. And I think it's notable that Iowa returned almost all of its production at wide receiver from last season. The only real loss you think of is Caleb Brown, and he really didn't make
And I've
much of
forgotten about him completely.
Yeah, he didn't even make much of an impact last year. And Caden Weejan's another guy, right? Another kind of like gadget guy. But it's like you feel like maybe it's starting to build momentum. And that's where we saw it at the open practice in spring, right? That was one of the biggest storylines that come out of that. It's like, okay, the wide receivers look like they're starting to get more comfortable. Tim Lester said the same thing. So I think there's enough hints now the last few months where it's like, okay, there might be something there with Iowa's wide receivers finally turning the corner. Now, of course, we need to see it happen on the field. I think that's the big caveat to all of this. But
we did in the spring. I mean, we did. It looked like it.
Right. Yeah. I should say in game.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like the evidence.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a myth out there. We did see evidence of it in the spring.
Yeah, there's been enough said, I think, from Kirk Ferentz, from Tim Lester, and from what we've seen in past, and also from what we saw starting to take steps forward last season, that, I think there's some legitimacy to the potential for Iowa's wide receivers to move in a substantially better direction this upcoming season.
And I had to sit down with Bud Meyer this summer as well. So, we've been inundated with a lot of receivers talk, and it's a consistent message throughout the program that there is, they're very pumped about this group. And I think what also Kirk Ferentz alluded to on the podium, Tyler, and I saw him reiterate it on your video that you posted at hawkcentral.com, that he sees a lot of position battles going into September. Like, hey, we're going to probably, have 3-4 games before we know who's our best player at certain positions. And he specifically said he was thinking about wide receiver when he was mentioning that. And I was thinking about linebacker. I was thinking about cornerback. I was thinking about left tackle as well when he mentioned that. But I think that's the fun part about this wide receiver thing is there's not even counting Terrence Smith, who Bud Meyer and Lester were both like, wow, this guy has really put together and can do some things. True freshman. Outside of him, there's 8 legit guys that could be – you really can't even say who's going to be the top 4 or 5. Like, there's almost zero predictability to who it's going to be. KJ Parker, Sam Phillips, Caden Weechin, Reese Vanderzee, Jacob Gill, Jarrett Bowie, Dayton Howard, and I'm forgetting one other one. Who am I forgetting? Seth Anderson. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I mentioned them all. So,
yeah, no.
Who do you pick there?
No, you just mentioned we hadn't even talked about him with Sam Phillips. And that's you're bringing in someone who has more than 2,000 receiving yards in his career and adds kind of that speed dynamic that Iowa hasn't had, and that may be a downfield threat. So he's another guy who, we didn't see him in the spring open practice. We haven't really gotten legitimate eyes on him, but he could be a game changer in terms of kind of the deep threat. So I think there's a lot to at least entering the season in fall camp. There's at least some hope and some straws to grasp onto there.
Yeah. And it'll be fun to see how it plays out. You also, it's a veteran feel. It's a veteran / young group because you've got 4 seniors, Weechin, Gill, Anderson, and Phillips. There's some experience now in that room. And then you got the young guys. Vanderzee got a year under his belt. Howard, Bowie, both going to be sophomores. And then KJ Parker, who might be the best of them all. We'll see. Redshirt freshman. And Terrence Smith, true freshman. Pretty exciting to think about. Dean Frine asks in the chat, has Iowa opened camp already? No. First practice, Dean, is July 30th. So, 5 days from now? So Wednesday, they will have their first practice. And then you will hear from us again on Media Day, which is August 8th, Kids Day, August 9th. That's when the next kind of flow, this was kind of a big flow of coverage. The next one comes right around, August 8th, 9th, 10th, in that range from us. That's why I'm going on vacation next week. That's why we're doing a pod right now. Your Tim Lester pod will air next week on Hawk Central. So that comes out July 30th as well. So that's going to be a good one. You won't want to miss it. That'll be on iTunes, Apple, here at hawkcentral.com. So really good one. I'm still working on writing all that stuff up, but Lester reiterated same thing on receivers. Now let's move to quarterbacks, Tyler. That was the other probably notable thing that I saw. And then I'm going to keep kicking it to you because you were there doing the work, but Gronowski is the starter. I don't, not a surprise, but the fact that Ferentz is pretty adamant about he's going to be the starter is notable. It's not like he said, hey, we're going to have a competition. That tells me they like what they've seen from Mark Gronowski. Obviously paid him a lot of money, 7 figures to come here. But on top of that, Hank Brown, which Lester reiterated with me behind the scenes as well, had a really good spring. I feel like, let me talk about Hank Brown for a sec before we talk about Gronowski. We were pretty enamored with Jackson Stratton in the spring game. And I would say, number one, Ferentz said that was his best practice of the spring. Number two, Lester kind of pointed out to me, he was going against the 2s and 3s. And honestly, it was probably more like 3s and 4s if you really looked at who was out there, because Iowa didn't play some of their 1s as much. Some of those guys were hurt. And Brown was going against the first string defense most of the time. And so, he he was kind of saying, if you flip that, you know, you might have seen a lot of different results. That said, Jackson Stratton made some really, you know, laser throws and was very impressive that day. But that said, they really liked the spring that Hank Brown said. I saw Kirk Ferentz saying, we think he's going to be much better in August. And then they love Jeremy Heklinski. That's a guy we haven't seen yet, Tyler. But Lester said on a different podcast that Warren Ruggiero thought Heklinski could be a 4-year starter at Wake Forest. That's how good he thinks he is. And he was a pretty highly touted prospect, short kid, but it sounds like he is in the mix for that number 2 spot already, Heklinski, without even taking a snap yet at Iowa.
Yeah, so Kirk Ferentz basically saying, like you said, Mark Gronowski, they would anticipate him being the starter, but they're not closing the door on, it's if someone beats him out in fall camp, then so be it. But as we stand right now, Mark Gronowski's the starter, which is hardly news. That's what was widely expected. Kirk Ferentz, he tipped his hand a little bit by saying, Iowa's top 3 options at quarterback right now were not in the program last season. So that would, one, obviously be Mark Gronowski, and then the other 2, like you were mentioning, Hank Brown and Jeremy Heklinski. So that right now is kind of your top 3, that upper group. And, what Kirk Ferentz said about Mark Gronowski, I just put up a quote here, which I thought was notable, and kind of because obviously with him being extremely limited in the spring, there's only so much they could see from him. Now he's back fully healthy, but Kirk Ferentz saying of Mark Gronowski, we've seen him do some testing and stuff in the strength program this summer. That's extremely impressive. And the numbers that he puts up are awfully impressive compared to his peers. That doesn't happen by accident. He's worked on it. I'll be surprised if he doesn't transition and play pretty well. So, I mean, everything we've heard about Mark Gronowski has basically been glowing, between his leadership, between what he did while he wasn't physically able to practice. Like, it sounds stuff has been going well. Now, I mean, in the thing about, Kirk Ferentz also saying that he feels like, the quarterback room has been an upgrade. It's upgraded now.
Yeah. Well,
and
low bar, but yes.
Right. Well, so, and I think it's very understandable at this point to be like, here we go again, because it's like you can say all you want, and it's like the results have kind of spoken for themselves the last few seasons, where it's like, all right, let's see it on the field. And is it good that Kirk Ferentz feels that the quarterback room is in a better spot? Yeah, like it obviously it's good, but like talk is kind of cheap at this point. The signs have been good. I think Iowa has their top 3 options undoubtedly are better than they were last season and then they were 2 seasons ago. But we saw it last season. Iowa just blew through the depth chart at quarterback with injuries, and you never know what can happen. So on paper, Iowa is better equipped, but that paper can sometimes just get crumpled up and thrown in the trash. So take it for what it's worth. But what we're hearing is at least seems encouraging based on the last 2, compared to the last 2 seasons.
Yeah. In the chat on YouTube, Mr. Veteran Hawk says, I know Gronk didn't transfer to sit on the bench, but he hasn't practiced. Am I the only one a little bothered that Iowa just names him the starter? What if Brown or Stratton are better? It's a good question. He didn't name him a starter, but I would say, here's what I would say about that. If Ben McCullum brought Bennett Sturts from Drake and he was just injured for a little while, and you would still expect Bennett Sturts to be the starting point guard, because he's healthy. You expect him to be the starting point guard because he's proven it at another level. They brought him in here for that very reason. I think that's probably a good analogy. Mark Gronowski's played 55 college games. He's won 49 of them. He's been incredibly durable. He's got 2 national championships. He's the FCS National Player of the Year in 2023. And he's coming off a shoulder surgery, but they've been very encouraged by the way he's throwing the ball. His teammates have said he throws the ball very hard. Lester isn't going all crazy about it yet, though. He said he wants to see him. And I like that approach from the offensive coordinator, too. He says, we're going to have a competition. But so he needs to see it, too. But I think that is a valid question. But I think at the same time, you give Mark Gronowski you start him with the first team and make someone beat him out. That's the way I look at bringing in a guy with that price tag. And also, it's not like, anyone else on the roster has really proven much of anything at the college level. I mean, Stratton started 2 games, threw 29 passes, completed like 18 of them. He was 4 for 17 at Colorado State. Hank Brown, started a couple games in the SEC. Yes, also got benched, and he's young and still learning the offense. And then, of course, Hecklinski's never played. So I don't have a problem with it, but that's the answer. And then do you have any thoughts on that before we move to one other question here?
Well, I just think Mark Gronowski deserves the benefit of the doubt at this point. And I thought Kirk Ferentz handled that well, because let's just think of – so he basically said they would anticipate Mark Gronowski being the starter, but if someone beats him –
Yeah,
if someone beats him out, great. Let's think about if Kirk Ferentz had said – it's an open competition. We don't know. Then people are going to be saying, "Oh, well, is Mark Gronowski concerned? Where are they?" Because I were really concerned behind the scenes. Or on the flip side, if Kirk Ferentz goes out there and says Mark Gronowski is the starter no matter what, that's not going to send a great message to Hank Brown and Jeremy Hecklinski. So Kirk Ferentz kind of, straddled the line a little bit, and I thought played basically the situation well. Is how we think too, right? Like Mark Gronowski should be the starter, but if Hank Brown is playing like Tom Brady out there, how can you not start him? So that I think that's kind of how it stands right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see Gronowski. He's a gamer. I mean, that's a guy that if it's 3rd and 6, he might scramble for 7 yards and put his shoulder down and get the first down. He's been incredibly durable, but still, you want to see that number 2 competition, if he does win the job, be really good. And that's what Kirk Ferentz wants to see as well. He wants to see Hecklinski. I mean, let's assume it's those 2, and then maybe Jimmy Sullivan, jumps into the fray by then, learns the offense. Jimmy Sullivan, Ryan Fitzgerald, they're going to spend this year learning the offense, the Shanahan system behind the scenes. They're not going to probably be
ideally.
Yeah, you never know
at this point.
After last season.
Like when Jackson Stratton comes in last season, you're like, oh, he's probably going to fade in the background. There you go.
Pocket mobile.
There you go.
Another question from where was I got to scroll up here, but the question was about, I don't remember who had it. Let me find it. Left tackle. By the way, Dargan, get your hair ready because there's a lot of requests for women's basketball coverage. Where is it? Sam Humble asks, talk about left tackle, making me nervous that no one is pulling away. Now they haven't had practice yet with Bryce George. Did Kirk Ferentz say anything about left tackle or offensive line out there, Tyler?
He did mention Bryce George and basically, saying that physically he is ready, physically. And obviously a guy who's also had success at a lower level, similar to Mark Gronowski at Ferris State, winning multiple national titles there. But, Logan Jones, he seemed very encouraged by the younger guys and maybe the guys that, because I was losing – even though they're bringing back Logan Jones and Jennings Dunker, who are 2 of probably the better offensive linemen in the Big Ten, you lose Mason Richmond, you lose Connor Colby, you lose some key reserves or guys that can make spot starts like Tyler Ellsbury, and Nick DeYoung. So there's some meat on that offensive line to replace, but Jack Dotzler, Trevor Lauk, Cade Pieper, those were guys that Logan Jones named as maybe younger guys that have played more kind of reserve or, been a little bit in the shadows that he feels like are ready for the challenge. And so, I mean, those were some of the guys that, the names that we heard come up. But I think that the offensive line might be a little bit of a overlooked storyline of how important it will be to fill some of those holes, because you feel good, obviously, about the guys that are returning, but Iowa lost some serious, experience and depth from the unit last season.
I mean, I feel great about Cade Pieper. So to me, I feel really solid about left guard, Bo Stevens, center, Logan Jones, right guard, Cade Pieper, right tackle, Jennings Dunker. Maybe I'm over my skis on Pieper, but he's setting program records for the vertical jump and for running. And if you guys read my, Tim Lester pieces and listen to the pod next week, they need a fast offensive line, and Cade Pieper is fast on the offensive line and getting Tyler Linderbaum comps. So I think he's going to be their center of the future. I feel great about those 4 spots. What I detected from Kirk Ferentz was they really like Bryce George a lot. So, and I know that George Barnett likes Trevor Locke a lot and Jack Dotzler. And I think Dotzler's probably a little bit ahead of Locke. So that gives you 3 guys there. Mike Minslinski, don't forget about him. Could be a good senior story. Maybe rotating in at right guard just a bit. Could flex to center if need be, if Logan Jones gets hurt. So I like the depth there. Jennings Dunker fully healthy by camp, so that's all good. We got a question about Barnett. Like, will he be fired if the O-line struggles? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Their O-line was dominant last year, and Barnett has retooled that room. He's doing a great job. I think that he was embattled for a while, but he's definitely turned the corner in my mind. Kids Day practice is August 9th. I saw someone else answered that in the chat. 3 players were out there, Tyler. Cohen Entringer, Logan Jones, you mentioned him, Ethan Herkett. What did you learn, if anything, notable from any of them? Give us your best story or best interview.
I think the Cohen Entringer hype there's some legitimacy to it. That Kirk Ferentz spoke highly about him, and it's notable that like Cohen. We talked about this a little before, but like Cohen Entringer has made one start in his Iowa career, and he gets voted to be one of Iowa's players representatives at Big Ten Media Days. So that just speaks to how he is viewed within the program by his peers. Logan Jones, as kind of just talking through, to him about, he obviously made the change to center a few years ago from the defensive side of the ball. And he still feels like there's more to go on that offensive line. Like he's excited about where, what it can still become. A couple other things I wanted to touch on that, Kirk Ferentz said, one of the position battles that we're definitely keeping an eye on is cornerback. And with Jamari Harris leaving, Iowa didn't find that stability opposite of him last season. And 2 names that you would expect Kirk Ferentz had said that he feels like had made strides, Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall, 2 veteran guys now. But it was good, encouraging to hear that that Kirk Ferentz feels like those 2 guys have made strides. He also spoke really highly of Jalen Watson, a true freshman who got some meaningful snaps last season. And then Shahid Barros, another one, transferred from South Dakota. Those were the 4 that Kirk Ferentz mentioned. And, you maybe would throw Rashad Godfrey in there as well as someone that I've heard is, in the mix. Kirk Ferentz didn't name him specifically, but you're looking at maybe at least 4 to 5 guys in the competition there for starting spots and depth. And then also continuing to hear really good things. This was Ethan Herkett said this, so did Kirk Ferentz. Jonah Pace and Bryce Hawthorne, 2 transfers on the defensive line. Like they're going to be factors on Iowa's defensive line. And you think about there's a pretty big void there with losing Y.A. Black, probably one of the more underappreciated parts of Iowa's defense. Now you bring back Aaron Graves, who could have just a monster season, but that, Iowa's defensive line, those 2 guys have consistently, we've heard really good things about, and that was reiterated at Big Ten Media Days. So Bryce Hawthorne, a younger guy, he came alongside Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State. Jonah Pace, more experience, coming from Central Michigan. But when you talk about that interior of Iowa's defensive line, those are 2 guys that I've continued to hear good things about. And it seems like they're going to be, in the first year in the program, they're going to be factors on that side of the ball.
Yeah, Pace, of course, 1 year to go, eligibility. Hawthorne with 3, so they feel great about him. And I heard Ferentz mention that he has the same work habits as Mark Gronowski, also coming from South Dakota State. So I think that's another reason. That seems really encouraging. Yeah, that was one of my biggest offseason concerns, and it seems like that has been quelled quite a bit. So honestly, they've plugged a lot of the offseason concerns for me. Linebacker, that's one we're just going to have to see more. Maybe I do think that could become a position battle just because of the young talent that they have underneath. If Seth Wallace wants to make that a competition, through camp and into the season, we'll see. I think he's going to want to get some of those young guys on the field, the Preston Reese, Cam Buffington, Derek Weiskopf, those guys, Jaden Montgomery, Landon Van Kekerich. I mean, there's a lot of young guys coming up, and that's not even counting the really hyped true freshmen that are just arriving and getting into the system. So really a lot of depth coming up at linebacker, where you get those 250-year seniors in Harrell and Shire, something we'll be watching. I know you got only a few minutes left here, Tyler. So Beth Getz also talked. Maybe give me your top takeaway from Beth before we let you go.
So one of the things that's come out this summer is that I was adding risers to Carver Hawkeye Arena for this upcoming season that allow students to be, a little bit more intimate environment and hopefully help the game day atmosphere. But how that came about is Beth Getz was basically just on the court, like tracing her, marking out with her feet, like how can we potentially get students closer, and that kind of sparked the idea. But so that's the short term of Carver Hawkeye Arena, trying to make it a more modern and possibly better atmosphere. Now the longer term is they're fundraising right now to look at more substantial renovations to Carver Hawkeye Arena. What could that look like? It could look like more premium seating, trying to help the flow in terms of walking, and because it can get kind of backed up there in Carver Hawkeye Arena, and just other kind of things that will make it a more modern experience. And obviously Carver Hawkeye Arena has been around for a while, but that's something they're looking into. It's not like set in stone right now what exactly it's going to look like, but those are some of the things they're considering. They're fundraising, and that's kind of where that project stands. And the other thing was just revenue sharing. It sounds like obviously with that kicking in officially now, it seems like that's gotten off to a good start. Per Beth Getz, it's gone pretty seamlessly. So that was the AD report.
Yeah, men's basketball ticket sales up. That's good.
Yeah.
Season ticket sales, we don't have numbers on that yet. They're still ongoing. So, but sounds like anecdotally things are up there. And hey, more premium seating I think would be smart for Carver, especially if you can get like some kind of middle section or something in there where you don't have to walk forever to get to concessions, bathrooms, whatever. I don't know what's possible, but they dug a wrestling tunnel through. It's got to be possible to do some of that stuff. I would reduce capacity, make more premium seating, and she wants to make it more, of a venue that could be like hosting concerts and that kind of thing, a revenue generating facility rather than just sitting there, rotting away. It's been 40 some years now. So, but that said, we've seen it in women's basketball. If the team's good, the crowds are great. So just go win games, and the fans will love it. The atmosphere will be good. I know amenities could be better, but I wouldn't say it's like an imminent priority, but it sounded like she talked about it. So anyway, speaking of women's basketball, we'll bring Dargan on in a second. Any more final comments, Tyler, before we let you go?
Last thing is, it's interesting that Iowa in the back end of the secondary loses Sebastian Castro, Quinn Schulte, two multi-year starters, but there's a level of confidence of the guys that are coming in behind them. Xavier Wampa is returning. This is his last go of it. He's obviously a more established guy, but Cohen Entringer, who was at Big Ten Media Days, like we talked about, and Zach Lutmer, two guys that have not we know about them, but they haven't burst onto the scene yet. Iowa feels really good about those two guys. So we talk about like the competition at linebacker and cornerback, and it seems like those guys in the back end of the secondary, even though they're going to be expected to be new regular starters, Iowa feels good about Lutmer, Cohen Entringer to go along with Xavier Wampa.
All right, buddy. We'll let you get to the airport. Safe travels back. Thanks for your hard work out there. Hold down the fort while I'm on vacation next week, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. We're going to bring on Dargan Southard now, my teammate for Iowa women's basketball coverage. Hey, good, Dargan. How you doing, buddy?
I had to get the lighting right while you guys were going on. I had some furniture rearrangement in my house, and so I had to find a new spot. But we're good to go.
We'll give the people some women's basketball coverage by popular demand. I mean, it's summer, and I would say any kind of post about Iowa women's basketball, people love it. There's a lot of interest in this team, Dargan, and you can feel it. You can feel the energy from the new players. That was the biggest takeaway, I would say, from Jan Jensen's comments the other day, just how much she really loves the 5 newcomers, like all of them. And obviously Addie Deals at the top of that list, but I would say Layla Hayes is 1B. I mean, she really looks good. She looks like an instant contributor. Journey Houston, she loves her as I think a future play. And then, of course, the 2 transfers, Chit Chat Wright and Emily Rodriguez, they're going to be in the rotation too. So a lot of excitement about, I think, the newcomers in the program in particular. What have been your takeaways? We got to see 4 practices this summer. I think I missed 1. You might have missed 1 or 2. But between all of us, we've seen 4. So thoughts?
Yeah, it's there's no doubt that this has turned into a year-round beat. Whether it's and it's nice that the program obviously recognizes that too, and gives us these summer availabilities and viewing sessions. So that's appreciated. But yes, I mean the interest, hasn't slowed really at all. And I think, whereas the Caitlin Clark years, everything was very established. This is the second year in a row where there are a lot of curiosity about how things are exactly going to shake out, because I think you and I both came to the same conclusion that if this team can get everybody in a productive role, there's a lot of depth on this team, and there's going to be a lot of different ways that Iowa can win games with this team. And so, the young players definitely, I think, made an impact in what we saw. I probably the moment of what I saw was Layla Hayes swatting Ava Hayden twice in about a 3-minute span. So she's definitely, her size is pretty undeniable. When you stand next to her, she's pretty tall.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a lot of promise there with how exactly she's going to, find her way into the rotation. And I think what's clear is, no matter where you're at on the experience spectrum, if you bust your way into the rotation and show time and time again, you're going to play. And so I think that's been, a message all the way through. One thing also that'll be interesting to watch is, you hear the phrase all the time, whether it's a new coach or a freshman or whatever, you see the biggest growth between year one and year two. And so I'm curious how that looks for Jan Jensen, because, there were times throughout all the year, all throughout the season last year, good and bad, where, her being a first-year head coach was significant. And so, I think her having that, behind her, getting that, off the plate of, hey, figuring a lot of stuff out for the first time, I think is going to help get everybody in productive roles faster, maybe than even last year was. And so, but, for me, I think if I had to kind of peg one thing as really interested in seeing how it's going to shake out and big and kind of shaping the identity of this team is Hannah Stolke's senior year. Obviously she's been fluctuating between the 4 and the 5 more than probably she anticipated. But at this point, I think if they can not only get her to the 4 and have her be some sort of shooting threat, not, jacking up a ton of threes per game or, have her game totally move outside the paint, but just having her locked in at the 4 gives you so much more freedom at the 5, which, Iowa has probably its most depth at, you could say, with Ava and Layla there as well. So big for her to kind of have one last big senior year. And, she talked about it loosely that, the WNBA is on her radar, as it should be. She's seen Kate Martin find a role in the WNBA, Lucy Olson find a role in the WNBA. And with a big senior year, it's fathomable to see her find her way there as well. So a lot of intrigue early on in July, and I'm sure it's only going to ramp up between now and the start of the season.
Yeah, appreciate you guys jumping in with questions here in the comments. I see a bunch flowing in already. If you have any others, let us know. We'll try to zero in on some of the more hot topics. On the note of Stolke, one of our listeners says, Mitchell Baker says, I'm interested to see what a lineup with Hayes and Hayden on the court together looks like. And to that point, Jan Jensen has teased now. I heard her say it and then kind of followed up with her after interviews and got a little more clarification on it. They are looking at a wrinkle, the 3 out, 2 in. They've run the 4 out offense since Gustafson left after the 19. Mm-hmm. So they had Gustafson and Stewart at the 5 and the 4 in 2019. So they used the 3 guards, 2 post offense, a little bit more interior. But ever since Kathleen Doyle and obviously Caitlin Clark and then Lucy Olson, 6 years of the 4 out offense where you've got that, the 4 position is more of a 3-point shooter / rebounder, McKenna Warnock. Last year, 2 years ago, it was Kate Martin ended up being that player. Definitely, not a post player. And then last year it was more Sydney Fulter as in the stretch run there, because they tried to make Stuelke that 4 last year. Didn't really work out. And so this is the 3rd straight year they're going to try with Stuelke at the 4. But maybe she's going to be a 4 in more of a post off, I don't know how much they're going to run it.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be completely? I mean, I think you could argue that if Hayes is really good, because you're not going to want to split up the 5 minutes, but 3 ways. You're going to want Hayden and Hayes at the 5, to me. And if you do run a 3 out, you could have Hayden and Hayes on the floor together a lot. And I think that's probably the vision next year, but not this coming year, but for the 2 following years to have, because they're going to be 2 of your best players for those 2 years. I mean, you can see it already. I mean, Hayden, I would say Heidi Deal looks the best to me, looks like the best player to me, and Ava Hayden is right there with her. Those 2 look tremendous. Now, we didn't get to see Stuelke at all this summer.
Right.
Just 1 practice. She's back. So she's going to be one of the best players too, obviously. But what we saw was Deal, Hayden, and probably Hayes, honestly, might have been their 3 best players.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back to 2019, and Gustafson and Hannah Stewart were, pretty much on the floor 90% of the time together. And so I think that's a big key is, you saw last year Iowa get to a point where it did have to make kind of an identity change, moving Stuelke to the 5. And, that at that time, that was probably their best option. And so I think that that's what you could see again, in that the personnel is going to dictate how we play. And so if, Layla and Ava are too good to keep off the floor, and there's a lot of early evidence to have encouragement in that, then I think that's how I was going to play. And so I think, that goes back to, again, some of the learning how to coach on the fly in a season, which is a task that you can't really replicate until you're the one in charge, taking, the being out front, talking about every move. So, there's a lot of promise to this team. I think it's, another year away from the big spotlight. I think is not a bad thing, just because there still was a little bit of hangover to start the year. I think, coming off the Caitlin Clark years. And so to be another year removed from that, I mean, we're only down to, I think, 4 players on the roster who played in both Final Fours. I think this team can kind of further cement an identity, building off of what last year's team did. And I think there's, a chance that they could be in similar spots and have similar chances to do, things in March as well. So long way from there, but a lot of promise early on, I would say.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how she juggles it all, because, if they do go more of a post-heavy offense, which I think they should, because I think you want Stuelke and Hayes and Hayden, Stuelke and Hayden for sure, and I think Hayes is going to be right there. I think you want them on the floor a decent amount this year. And so then the backcourt minutes become really compressed, and you just added 3 players, Chit-Chat Wright, Addie Deal, and Emily Rodriguez, to Taylor McCabe, Kylie Feuerbach, Taylor Stremlow. I mean, and Tegan Mulaney, someone asked about her, Alan Brommel asked about her, how is Tegan Mulaney looking? I mean, she's kind of in that 3-4 range, position-wise. They're trying to figure out what's best for her. I would say, she hasn't stood out to me yet. The shot just hasn't been there. That's her superpower when it's on, is the shot. And we haven't seen it. It doesn't mean that's not there, but it wasn't there last season, and it hasn't been there in practice from what we've seen. Another question on Journey Houston. She was a big-time recruit before the injury. How's she looking? I would say she didn't stand out in our practice viewings, but what Jan Jensen said about her to me really was good. She's developed an outside shot, really hard worker, really high motor. I think they see her as I don't know if she's going to be in the rotation this year, but I think she's easily forgotten. And I don't know enough about her to speak beyond that, but I think that the signs are encouraging on her. Chit-Chat Wright, my impression is quick player, has a better shot than you would expect, but can she get that shot off at the Big Ten level?
Right.
Let's see. She's got a nice deep shot. Taylor McCabe, trying to extend her range. She's trying to, instead of just planting on the line trying to stretch defenses further where she can step out another 2, 3, 4 feet and deliver like maybe not logo Clark threes, but extend the defense a little more. And then Fearbox trying to add more of a mid-range game, where she can drive and score rather than rely on her three-point shot, which isn't super accurate at this point. So, I mean, she's obviously a defensive stopper as well. Who am I missing? Anyone? Taylor Stremmel, I feel like looked really good. She looks better.
Yeah.
I would say she looks like she looks like a sophomore now. Like last year, she just looked like a raw freshman. I think she looks like a little more chiseled, I would say, and just more refined in a lot of areas of her game. So I'm really optimistic about Stremlo. She's just kind of like the Kate Martin type. Well, she'll do whatever.
Yeah, and I think the emotional voices that you need throughout a long season, those are kind of resetting on this team as well. With obviously Sid was probably at the top of that list, and Lucy Olson had some of that in her as well. So, Taylor Stremlo's gotten a lot of that early praise as kind of being the one who keeps everybody on track. The veterans on this team like Taylor McCabe, Kylie Fearbach, Hannah Stolke, what kind of leadership roles vocally and obviously through play establishes there. So, and again, Addie Deal is going to, from all signs, have the ball in her court and be the one running the show. But, as we saw, even with Caitlin Clark's freshman year, when you have a freshman at the front of the line, it doesn't always go perfectly every night. And so can Iowa find ways to win, when maybe she's having an off game? I think all of that is significant. And I think all of it is part of why, the cohesion on this team has, promise early on, because, Jan's talked about people finding their roles, accepting their roles, and having that be a trademark of this team and this program. And I think there's a lot of ways that this team can fall into place in that regard. And so, I imagine practices were and will be in the future very competitive, just because, everybody kind of sees, the opportunity of what you can be when you're one of the best players on this team. But as you said, it's, the window for playing time for a lot of, people is smaller than it has been in past years. So, interested to see how everything shakes out in the coming months before we get rolling here in, I guess, late November or early November.
Yeah. We haven't seen like a schedule, right? Like we don't know the dates and
not the full schedule. We know the home and road opponents for the Big Ten, and then a few of the non-conference dates have come out, like the UConn game and the trip to Florida. So it's the Big Ten dates will be interesting. Obviously, there's going to be an LA road trip in there, with them having gone to Oregon and Washington last year. Aaliyah Guyton's going to return to Carver Hawkeye Arena with Illinois, so that'll be an interesting storyline.
Yeah.
And then, the Big Ten, obviously, there won't be any Juju Watkins this year, but can the Big Ten be another, high-end conference the way that it was last year with a lot of depth? So a lot of stuff to keep an eye on here between now and then.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see when that UCLA USC trip is, because what I was going to say was about the schedule was I think this team is going to take some time to figure out what its best.
I agree.
Imagination, like what's kind of like last year in a way, but that's understandable. Like I think fans need to give Iowa a little grace on that. They're completely. I mean, you pointed out like there's only a few people left from the Final Four teams. I mean,
right.
Stolke, Jim Fee, McCabe, and Fearbach. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And did any of them really play major roles? Not really, right?
Stolke on the second.
Oh yeah,
one.
Stolke did. Yeah, Stolke in the second.
But yeah, those were all mostly role players on those teams.
So we're distancing from that, and it's going to take a little time. That's a huge recruiting phase here coming up as well. McKenna Velichko coming in early September, top 6 national recruit. Can they get her in the fold? It's a real exciting time for Iowa women's basketball for sure. But I would just say patience, or maybe early in the season, just to see what this team looks like. They're going to be figuring out think about last year. Eddie O'Grady was playing a ton of minutes and looking great early in the year, and then by midseason.
Ava Hayden runs things in the postseason. So
yeah, right. Exactly.
And I mean, as much practice time as you get, you need to see how a lot of these players play when the lights are on. And so you're not obviously going to be able to totally replicate that until the season starts. And so, yeah, I think you could see where what this team looks like in March is a bit different than what it looks like in November. And that can, that could be for the better or for the worse. But the point being is that it will take time for all of those roles to kind of solidify. But as last year showed, if you can, figure out the blueprint, then you can win some big games and have some nice moments, later in the year.
Well, our Hawk Central radio show airs, the airtime is like 49 minutes. And we basically gave you guys that here on this Friday. So we kind of made up for not having a show this week, preempted by Big Ten Media Days. But, and then next week you'll get the Tim Lester pod while I'm on vacation. And then we're into Media Day week for football. So it's coming fast, coming furious. And we appreciate you guys tuning in live on YouTube. And then those of you listening later on the pod. That's awesome, too. Thanks for putting it all together, Dargan, for the Women's Basketball Insight. We will be touching base all year. We'll see you in the press box for Kids Day, too. You're going to be running the live blog on Kids Day.
I'm the live blog guy here.
Dargan does it all for us. So for Tyler Tachman and Dargan Southard, I'm Chad Leistikow. Thanks for joining us here on this Friday edition of the Hawk Central Podcast.